Hi everyone, welcome to the next training program. This one is on consultative selling. Kelly, do you say consultative or consultative?
Consultative.
Do you say tomato or tomato?
Tomato.
Mediterranean or no, what's the other one? Caribbean? I forget the other one. Consultative, consultative selling. And what is this according to Wikipedia? I'm going to read this to you, Kelly. There's 3 key words here. According to Wikipedia, this is an approach to sales or approach to selling based on the dialogue, that's the first word, between the salesperson and the customer. First, the customer is encouraged to express his or her needs. Encouraged, and that word, which you said earlier, was listening. So you're encouraged by being a good listener. The rep then selects the product or service that best meets those needs and adapts the sales message to the customer's needs and language. And that's what makes up consultative selling. Would you add anything to that, Kelly?
Well, no, as you mentioned, I mean, the emphasis being on listening. And I think when you think about that sentence that says the customer is encouraged to share their needs, the way that the implied or implicit thing there is that we're asking the good questions that get them to reveal those needs to us, right? So that's the thing, is that we ask great questions and we listen. That's really, and again, as you mentioned at the end, and that we adapt our language based on the person that we're talking to. So, for example, if you're with somebody who's clearly been in the industry for 50 years, you can be a little more in-depth as opposed to using more layman's terms if you're talking to somebody who's relatively new.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And this is a thing. This is a big thing. You know, I believe I started selling in the early 1980s, and it was an option back then. And we were taught to sell this way, consultatively. But you know what? You could still, I was selling business forms back then, but you could still say to someone, do you have anything I can quote on? And you'd find success. Not anymore.
Right.
Consultative selling is a must. This is absolutely the way to sell, no question about it. So what it does still, though, is it differentiates you because not everybody is doing this.
Right.
Most people, Kelly, I think they're still probably making that low-end sales call. Do you find that in your coaching?
Yeah, again, I think they're identifying themselves as a packaging or printing or large format or label salesperson, and who should I talk to about those things, and how can I get on your bid list, or how can I quote on another project? And again, this is like the one-way ticket to Commodityville. You know, this is the one-way ticket to lowest price winsville. Yeah. So we know that for an absolute fact, yeah.
I was doing a coaching call this morning, and I'm talking about consultative selling, and the guy said, I know exactly what you mean, and I make a general sales call that sounds, you know, very, very much like that. And I said, well, let's go over your general sales call. And he said, well, I go in there and I talk to people about what I do and the equipment that I have, and I'm just, I'm wincing, you know? And he did not hear a word I said. He was so focused on his thing. And I said, all right, let me try that from a different angle. You know, he just couldn't see it. He thought he was making a consultative sale. So anyway, it also gets you in at higher levels. So you're changing from, and I'll show you this on the next slide, but you're moving up the food chain.
Right.
All right. Plus the fact that this is a sales call that might not be effective at a lower level, like an administrative assistant or a junior buyer or something like that. This is something that almost forces you to go to the requisitioner.
Right.
It also leads to better sales, more customers. Why, Kelly? Why is it all that in a bag of chips?
Well, again, it's what how you're perceived. You're perceived as a partner. You're seen as someone who brings ideas to the table. You're seen as somebody they need to have on their side because you aren't just, you know, sharpening a pencil and putting a number together. You're asking questions. You're challenging. And you want to make sure that you understand, and we're going to say this over and over, the story of the piece. What is its mission? What are we even doing? Why are we even talking about this stuff? Right. Because you want to be able to understand what they're trying to accomplish. And let's face it, with a lot of, you know, with your experience and your ability to come up with great ideas, you may show them something they didn't have or know before.
Sure. So graphically, then, this is what it does. Most of the times we get engaged at the quote stage of the job. Hi, Kelly, this is Bill Farquharson. I'd like to talk to you about something something I might be able to print for you, a quote for you, you know, whatever it is I'm doing, labels, signage, you name it. I used to want to get into the equation at that level.
Right.
But before that happens, somebody had to design it.
Right.
Before that happens, somebody had to conceive it.
Right.
And that's where you want to get. You want to get to that spot where you're getting that phone call that says, hey, Bill, this is Kelly Malazzi, and I've got this project coming up. I've got a trade show that I'm doing. I've got a product launch. I've got to communicate a message. Can you come in and talk to me about how you can help me to meet my goals? So you're building that brand. You're being brought in at that level.
Yes.
But you can't sell your stuff. You can't just walk in with, this is what I do, and it doesn't matter what it is, no matter what the product is or the service is. It's not about you selling that stuff. It's about, instead, identifying the needs.
Right.
What we say, solving the problem, earning the orders. Kelly, do you remember, we haven't gone over this in a long time, but do you remember the 3 reasons why someone buys from you?
Well, they buy from you based on your knowledge of your own products and services,
Number 2.
your knowledge of your own company, and the knowledge of their company.
That's
so
number
actually
3.
Their company is number 1. Knowing who they are, right?
Raw sales ability.
Right. Did I not say that one?
No.
Oh, rats.
It's all right.
Big F for today for me. Sorry.
That's okay. Raw sales ability. So, Kelly, you can redeem yourself. What is raw sales ability?
Well, again, it's everything to do with how you communicate, how you ask questions, how you present yourself, whether you know what your, kind of your value proposition is, all that stuff, and persistence, and again, how you communicate, all that stuff.
Sure. And then being a good sales rep, first and foremost, is a good listener. A good sales rep is a good listener. Someone who is not just thinking about the next thing that he or she is going to say, but is listening with the entire body. Good eye contact, completely present, not got the head down, making notes or, anything else. But somebody who is really hearing not only the words, but between the words. Mm-hmm. A good sales rep is also a problem solver, right? Someone who asks a lot of what-if questions and then as an idea generator says, well, Kelly, let me ask you this. What about this as an option? So maybe a good sales rep would take a job that they're asked to quote on the job, but also give some other ideas as to what else can be done.
And something I want to interject there real quick, Bill, is that you also want to ask questions like, have you ever considered,
sure,
when we talk about those what ifs, because and something I might consider staying away from is you should, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to say you should do this. It's more like, have you thought about this? Have you considered this? Right. And even better, what else have you tried and all those kinds of things too. But we want to make sure that we keep our prospects' ego intact and not make them ever feel like they don't know what they're doing. That's very, very important.
And finally, a good sales rep shakes up the status quo, brings in new ideas, sees things from a different angle. All of these things, this all come from the consultative sale. And they all stem from the questions that you ask. Good, open-ended questions. So the first word in our definition then was dialogue. Mm-hmm. This is not me coming in and making a presentation. This is me coming and asking you questions.
Right.
It's like that. What was that game show with Drew Carey? Whose line is it anyway?
Oh, yeah.
And they used to have conversations. One of the skits they did was they had conversations, but everything had to be a question.
Right.
Right? And that's a lot like this. It's like you're interrogating someone. Like you're the lawyer or something, and you've got to get all the information by asking questions. That's what you do.
Or an interview. Maybe that's a different way of looking at it. It really is almost like an interview, if you think about it.
Yeah. What information, to stay on that for a second, going into that, Kelly, what information do you have to have, or what would be helpful to have going into a selling situation? Like, you'd want to know something about their industry, right? Mm-hmm. What else would you want to know if you could?
Well, again, what are their goals? What is it that they're trying to accomplish? Yep. And as you mentioned earlier, are they launching a new product? Do they have a trade show coming up? Or, more generally, what is it that the organization is trying to accomplish? And that's why when you mentioned going up the food chain, an admin or a lower level person might not be keyed into those kinds of situations. Right. So that's why people with C in front of their name or directors or VPs are the ones that you want to be talking to about these things.
Yes. Yes. So your job then is to listen and learn. Remember that you learn nothing with your mouth open. So if you hear yourself doing a lot of talking, and ask a question. Get the other person engaged. Ask open-ended questions. Kelly, what's an open-ended question?
Well, why is that important to you?
Right.
Tell me more about, again, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Help me understand what the circumstance has been in the past. Again, what have you tried in the past? One really, really important one, what is the purpose of this piece that you're creating? How will you know if it's successful? Those are the kinds of things that will absolutely differentiate you from the order takers out there. Nobody is asking them these questions in the position that you're in. So this is really, really good stuff.
You know what? I was on a coaching call this morning, and a client said to me that a sales manager told him years ago that if the customer is answering questions with yeses and nos, then you're not doing your job as a sales rep. And I thought that was
a good point.
Isn't that interesting? I never thought about that before.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So open-ended questions, then they really dig deep, and you get the client talking. And of course, again, the more listening you do and the less talking you do, the more that you learn. If you're looking for a reference book, you can't do any better than How to Win Friends and Influence People. Both Kelly and I are big fans of Dale Carnegie and that book that was written 75 years ago. Because really, it's all about understanding the client's needs. So the second word then is needs. The second word in that definition. You want to encourage the client to express their needs, not just give the specs. So the client says, here's a job to quote on. You want to learn the story behind the piece. Right? Like Kelly, you said earlier, tell me more.
Mm-hmm.
How does this work? What's everything that happens to it from the time it comes in to the time it leaves? And then you listen for things to kind of pique your interest and little clues as to how you need to design the piece.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's give an example here, Kelly. We've got the quote. So Kelly Malazzi, you're one of 5 vendors who are quoting this job. Mm-hmm. Every vendor gets the same piece. Every vendor gets the same quantities. 4 receive all the information, get up, shake hands, and leave. You stay behind, and you ask questions. So
right.
What kinds of questions might you ask about that beginning piece? Let's say it's a sell sheet, just to give you an example.
Well, right, I'd want to know who's going to be using it,
yep.
how and why are they going to be using it.
Yep.
Again, does it have to be used for a longer period of time, even though that's a closed-ended question? You really just want to get a handle on, again, what is the mission of this thing? Does it have to last for a day, a week, a year? Because that might even, again, what you're storing in the back of your mind is maybe I need to laminate it. Maybe I need to put it on a, 14-point cover or something like that. You want to make sure that you're asking the questions that will lead you down the path of, again, as you mentioned earlier, Bill, challenging the assumptions that those other 4 guys didn't do,
right.
Who are just coming back with, a quote on 60-pound text, which now that you've asked these great questions, that's not going to cut it.
And oftentimes we find that the piece that we're given isn't going to solve the needs that were expressed.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at this going, well, wait a minute, that's not going to do that. So once you get that information, then the third word is adapts. You have to adapt your message. You have to adapt it in terms of language, depending on the personality of the person, so that you're heard. Mm-hmm. The position that they're in, because if they're an administrative assistant with no buying authority, they're going to look at you just blinking. So you want to get to the decision maker. So you're going to speak differently to different people. And that's one of the skills that you have to have. Whether administrative assistant, C-level, buyer, requisitioner, product manager, VP, all of these people have different buttons, and you have to understand exactly what those buttons are.
Mm-hmm.
So consultative selling then, Kelly, is a combination of asking questions that ferret out the story behind the piece, the purpose, the need, the desire. That's the problem, all right? Mm-hmm. Solve the problem with your solution, adapting, using different language, and you'll earn the order. You'll get brought in at the design stage of the job. You won't be subject to price. And
right.
The next time something comes up, they'll call you first, and you'll be designing this to your specifications.
Yep.
So what was optional back when I first started, and a little bit later when Kelly first started, is now mandatory.
Agreed.
Okay. Well, that's it for consultative selling, and we will move on to the next subject. Kelly, thanks very much.
Thanks, Bill.
And we'll talk to you all again next time.